yet again, with gusts across more western isles coming in at around 55 to 60 miles an hour through the first part of the morning. Frost-free first thing across much of England and Wales, and the cloud will slowly break, so we'll see some more brighter skies evolving eastern Scotland, central and eastern areas of England. At the same time, rain will clip West Wales, the West Country, and we continue to see some heavy bursts for the Isle of Man, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, with snow over the higher ground above around 300 metres. A milder day towards the southeast, temperatures here 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. And then as we head through Wednesday evening, this slow-moving band of rain just makes inroads across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, Wales, central southern England, even seeing some patchy rain from time to time. But we'll see some colder air across the northwest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a frost to start the day on a Thursday morning. But through Thursday, you'll see some brighter skies here and even some sunshine across eastern counties of England as that cloud comes and goes. Across the spine of the country, damp conditions, low cloud and also some patchy rain. But through the latter part of the day, some brighter weather emerging across the southwest. Temperatures then typically coming in around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. And then it turns windy yet again on Friday with further spells of rain, showers to follow on Saturday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
With me, Mark Dolan, the big man, is back in the hot seat tomorrow. Breaking tonight, the UK is set to punish Vladimir Putin's regime further by phasing out Russian oil imports by the end of the year. This is good news, I think you'll agree. Well, we'll get expert analysis on that and across the issue of Ukraine throughout the show. As Putin's forces have been accused of again shelling refugee evacuation routes, is Russia guilty of war crimes? A top Ukrainian human rights lawyer weighs in on that one at 10:20. Also, the courageous Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky evoked Sir Winston Churchill as he made this historic address to the House of Commons today.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end, at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land.
I'll be talking about that great hero in my Big Opinion monologue. Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe gives her response to that and calls for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That's right, Anne Widdecombe is calling for for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. What do I think? Find out once again in my monologue in a couple of minutes' time. Plus, we speak to the American woman who went to Kharkiv to celebrate her mother's 85th birthday, but ended up in a war zone. She tells us of her astonishing escape from Putin's tanks at 10:20. Also, good news for Boris Johnson. Polls suggest that Bojo has bounced back from Partygate. So will Ukraine prove to be his Falklands moment and secure his place in number 10 for years to come? We'll hear from all sides on that in The Clash at 9:20. Is Bojo back? What do you think? In Uncancelled, the ex-Marine Colonel Stuart Scheller, who was fired from the US military for criticising Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal. He's live at 10:40 and he shares his exclusive views on the Ukraine conflict. And, in my big opinion, so much to get through. I'll tackle this glaring example of pathetic COVID theatre and stomach-churning hypocrisy from Keir Starmer and Justin Trudeau. And I'll be covering Ukraine as well. Elsewhere on the show, as several companies are criticised for their shallow virtue signalling on International Women's Day, does it still mean anything? To my incredible viewers who are female, let me know. mark@gbnews.uk. Ladies, I want to hear from you tonight. Plus, does the government's burning of mountain loads of unusable COVID PPE prove that we overreacted to the virus? That's right, folks. They are burning masks, visors, other technology and other bits of kit. Surely that's a disgrace. I'll put those points to my panel in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And we've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And we've got our Greatest Britain and Union jackass. So a busy 2 hours to come. It's Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. I'll be dealing with Sir Keir Starmer and Justin Trudeau in 2 minutes. I'm not pulling my punches, but first the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening. Thanks, Mark. The top stories tonight. Ukraine's president has told MP his countries will fight to the end, echoing British war leader Sir Winston Churchill in his address to the Commons. Volodymyr Zelensky was met with a standing ovation from the House of Commons as he appeared via a video link in the chamber. It's the first time a president of another country has addressed the main Westminster Hall. He thanked Boris Johnson personally for supporting Ukraine, but asked for more help in the war with Russia.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
President Zelensky. Well, the UK and the United States have announced a ban on Russian oil imports in an attempt to put pressure on Vladimir Putin. America says it will also ban gas imports, with US President Joe Biden this afternoon claiming it will be a potential powerful blow to Russia's economy. Britain is to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of the year. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says it will punish Putin's regime.
The economic impact of the sanctions that the UK has led has been extreme, and the Russian stock market hasn't opened for the last week, almost a week. The ruble has tanked, and the noose is tightening.
Boris Johnson. Poland has significantly agreed to hand over all of its MiG-29 fighter jets to the United States ahead of a likely transfer to Ukraine. It's part of a plan to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian armed forces. It comes amid warnings from Russia of significant consequences for any country hosting Ukrainian aircraft. The Polish government says the planes are ready to deploy immediately and are free of charge. And they're also calling on NATO to follow the lead. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister says 5,000 civilians have had to be evacuated from the country. It's the first successful humanitarian corridor opened up since the start of Russia's invasion, created under a temporary ceasefire. The United Nations Refugee Agency estimates the number leaving the country has so far reached 2 million people. And after much pressure, McDonald's restaurant chain has announced it's going to temporarily close its restaurants in Russia as the isolation of Moscow deepens. It's the latest company to pause all operations in the country since the start of the invasion of Ukraine. The fast food chain said it would continue paying salaries, however, to its 62,000 employees in Russia. And in the last few minutes, Coca-Cola has announced it's also suspending its business activity in Russia. More on that when I see you next time. But for now, it's time to hand back to Mark Dolan, who's sitting in for Dan Wootton. Mark?
Good evening, how are you? What's the difference between a great country and a not so great country? It's people. The themes of this war, just 2 weeks old, have been horror and carnage, but humanity and hope too, reflected in the colossal dignity of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking today in the House of Commons by video link. Now, I've been humbled in the last fortnight to sit in this chair and speak to people in Ukraine dodging shells and bullets. The MP speaking to me from a cupboard in her bedroom with a government-issued rifle at her side. A star tennis player who put down his racket and left his wife and children in another country to go back to his homeland and fight. I asked him what he would be willing to do if things got bad. He had one answer for me. He said anything. And it's clear the people of Ukraine will do anything and everything too, to protect their country. Frankly, they'll die for it. This tennis player's family live with a reality now, hour by hour, that their father and husband could get caught up in the conflict and not return. I was humbled to speak to a Ukrainian pop star in a rather fetching pink hat, because obviously that's very showbiz, and he told me much the same. He is this year's Eurovision entry with a cracking song about his mum. It's called Stefania, which has become an anthem. Let's all listen to it and get it to number one. This guy has put his music on hold and is helping in the relief effort and holding the line for his country. I was humbled by the YouTube star with much the same story of courage and forbearance. The history of these two countries is complex, and hate him as we do, it's important that we understand the background to what Putin is doing so we can ultimately resolve it and prevent it from happening again. But what is demonstrably clear is that this is an illegal invasion. War crimes are being committed as we speak. Men, women and children are being murdered. And this is playing out as a battle of good versus evil. Everyone I've spoken to in Ukraine wants a no-fly zone, which would see NATO and the West keep the skies over Ukraine clear, stopping any Russian planes dropping bombs, missiles or opening fire from above. At first glance, it makes sense. With the skies of Ukraine clear, the brave and sophisticated Ukrainian army would have a fair fight with the Russians, many of whose troops already seem semi-detached from what they consider Putin's war. With a no-fly zone, the spirited Ukrainian army, which has been woefully underestimated by the Kremlin, can defeat Russia, which would ultimately see the back of Vladimir Putin altogether. It's unlikely he would re-emerge from his Siberian bunker where he is reportedly hanging out, probably sat behind a massive desk. He loves a massive desk, does our Vlad. Did you know IKEA have sold out of those huge tables? Imagine trying to self-assemble one of those. It would take all day. I'd leave it to Mrs. Dolan. She's good with her hands. But a no-fly zone is a big ask. If a NATO plane shoots a Russian jet out of the sky, Putin will consider that a provocation by the West, and it's potentially World War III, with implications not for thousands, which is already a nightmare, but for millions around the world. Never say never, of course. But for now, we must crank up the sanctions and supply Ukrainians with as much intelligence and military hardware as we can get our hands on. We are in a very dark place, and I fear things will get worse before they get better. But history shows that good always prevails over evil. Truth prevails over lies, and right prevails over wrong. But not without a fight. And Ukraine's fight is ours too. There's an old saying, genius loves company. But the flip side of that is that prize numpties seem to stick together like glue. Take a look at this double act from hell. The grinning tyrant Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, only half his face covered in black this time, and a man who spends more time on his knees than a Playboy bunny, Sir Keir Starmer, a man who campaigned to get Russia-loving communist Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. What a pair. With the Labour Party having supported all of the increasingly questionable COVID measures, and at every turn pushing for more, longer, harder, faster, Starmer called Freedom Day reckless, don't forget, it strikes me that the most pious, seemingly most lovely, caring, hand-wringing political leaders have proven to be the most autocratic. The worst example of this is, of course, the Kiwi Mussolini herself, Jacinda Ardern. These holier-than-thou leaders have been the first to ditch Western values and follow the policies, politics and philosophy of the Chinese Communist Party. Lockdowns, face masks and vaccine mandates are not Western ideas. And which political leader had the right to smash the nation's economy, pile up debt for future generations, stop treating other diseases and wreck lives? A crisis always shows you someone's true nature. And for the likes of Ardern and Trudeau, the mask has slipped. Trudeau can't lecture Vladimir Putin about democracy and freedom when he literally cleansed protesting truckers off the streets of Ottawa. Saint Jacinda can't talk about democracy and freedom when she spent 2 years turning the great country of New Zealand into the world's largest open prison. I take that back. It's not even an open prison. It's a closed one. And yet Starmer, a man who would be Prime Minister, can't wait for a photo op with these autocrats. And what sticks in the craw is this picture of them together in London yesterday. Let's just take another look at this horror show. Of course, this happened yesterday, weeks after the mask mandate was lifted. But they're wearing the standard issue woke uniform of a face covering. It's theatre, folks, and crap theatre at that. Even Andrew Lloyd Webber couldn't conceive sick-making dross like this. In my view, it shows how cynical they are and how stupid they think we are. It's like the TV chat shows where they're all socially distanced in the studio and huddled together for photos in the green room after. Take a look at this. Here's the before photograph. Lovely. All socially distanced, stay safe, save lives. A couple of hours later with a glass of champagne. How surprising. Cheek by jowl. The elite will fall, and I can't wait. It was safety first for Justin Trudeau with Sir Keir Starmer, but on the same day, meeting our 95-year-old monarch, no masks. Of course, the Queen is not wearing one. She's very sensible. The Queen is vaccinated, she's had COVID, she trusts her immune system, and she's probably looked at the data around those filthy and environmentally catastrophic, socially divisive, economically damaging rags. These politicians know the masks don't work, so it's theatre. But really what it means is that they're lying to you. But I'm delighted to say that justice will be done and the truth will out. In the years to come, those who performed this egregious assault on our liberties and bankrupted their countries to battle a disease that couldn't be stopped will pay the price. When the human, societal, health and economic scale of what we've done becomes apparent, the anger will likely spill over well beyond the ballot box. The rage will light the night sky like a paroxysm of fireworks. Democracy, individual autonomy, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, these are precious. And when these numpties seek election in the next few years, restoring our freedoms will be the only show in town. Are any of these bullies in a position to lecture the monster Putin about democracy and liberty? Niet. That's my view. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'm delighted to say I have an elite panel with me tonight. Former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, former London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Rebecca, great to have you back on the show. First of all, that photo, Trudeau and Keir Starmer, it's too much, isn't it?
I mean, I'm definitely not as upset about it as you are. I don't know if anyone's as upset about it as you are.
Possibly not.
But I take your point that if I were Justin Trudeau, I would not be wearing a black face mask because, like, just the jokes write themselves. That's stupid. Whoever's his PR should have thought about that. If anybody doesn't know what I'm referring to, just Mr. Trudeau had a little bit of a tendency to do fancy dress when he was at university in a very, very unappealing way. But no, I'm not terribly upset about it. I think as long as it's a choice, as long as you can wear it if you want to.
I mean, I understand. Look, when there was a mask mandate, I wore a mask because I was not exempt. But we don't have a mask mandate now, so what are they doing?
I think they both still feel that it is important. I don't personally feel the same way. My major issue was that it made me spotty, and I didn't like that. And I was more worried about my vanity than about anything else.
Very honest of you.
That was my only real interest in it.
I like getting spots because it makes me look like a teenager again. Takes years off you.
What I didn't like is that I hadn't had my Botox topped up, so you could only see the old-looking bit of my face rather than the young-looking bit of my face.
Listen, there's no old bit, let me tell you. But I mean, look, the whole point is it's COVID theatre, isn't it? I mean, I think you're being far too charitable with these chaps.
I mean, to be fair, I still probably am the last person in the UK who has a bit of hope for Keir Starmer. I have a little bit of a soft spot for him. I think he does his best. And I think what probably happened is they said, Mr. Trudeau will be wearing a face mask. Would you like to wear one too? And Keir probably went, yes. That's my guess. Because I think when somebody else says they want to, you tend to follow their lead.
But do you think it was sort of an unfortunate irony that Trudeau wore a mask to meet Keir Starmer but not to meet the Queen, a woman that's just recovered from COVID?
That's the point.
I assume it's because the Queen has just had COVID, therefore cannot get it again. That's
wow,
logical.
Natural immunity.
But
we're allowed to talk about it now.
Everyone agrees that you can't get COVID twice in the same month, right? I don't think there's anybody saying that's possible.
I'm not sure we'll agree with that, but for me, it's a hypocrisy. You wear one with Keir Starmer, who's young and vital and fit, and you don't wear one with our Queen, who's in her mid-90s. For me, it is a bit of theatre, isn't it? It's a theatre of fear. If we ever, as a country, made a decision that we're going to move past masks, we're going to live with COVID, we have to do that. And Keir Starmer should be supporting that, because COVID and the way we had to respond to it had a massive impact on our economy, on our health system, on our households. So therefore, he should be part of bringing it forward, not keep bringing us back to fear, not keep making us worry. Because let's be clear, if we have to wear masks, we could go back. But at this point, we're not doing that, and he should support that.
Why do you think they've worn masks for that photo shoot? For that
to look
meeting?
To look pious, to generate fear, I don't know. But where they have no leg to stand on is that in one meeting, he had a mask, and in another meeting, he didn't. And that, for me, smacks of...
Dawn Neeson, have I overreacted to this photograph? I will admit to having been triggered by it.
You have slightly, haven't you? No.
Because as I've said in the monologue, I think that they are patronising us. And I think that they're saying we're stupid.
It's virtue signalling nonsense. And the fact that he didn't care enough, if he's that worried about it, to wear a mask with the Queen is the bit that horrifies me. And, talking to the Queen, what has she done in a previous life that lumbers her with all these idiot men? I mean, not only her son and her grandson, but her first public meeting after recovering from COVID is Justin Trudeau.
But that's been her whole career. She's had to put up with loser after loser after loser.
Well, she's had Colonel Gaddafi, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She has met Putin in the past, Martin McGuinness, Gerry Adams, and now Justin Trudeau. An all-time low.
That's the ultimate, isn't it? I mean, really, at one point, she's going to turn around and go, look, I'm done. Just go away. I don't even want to talk to you now.
Dawn, you've been reporting on British politics for many years, particularly as the editor of the Daily Star for over a decade. Do you think that chickens will come home to roost when it comes to all this theatre and all this posturing by politicians?
I think it has to, and I really do. I mean, as Sean mentioned earlier on, it's cost us enormously. I mean, the economy, mental health is a huge issue, I feel, that is going to descend on us. And of caused havoc for decades and decades. So, I mean, and how much of it was necessary?
Yeah, because people weren't angry about the Iraq War until a couple of years after it happened.
Yes.
When the penny dropped and we'd realised what a huge mistake we'd made. There were no weapons of mass destruction. I think this is like the Iraq War times 100.
But I mean, the thing is, there were demonstrations, weren't there, about the Iraq War?
Sure.
I mean, there was sort of like, we're not going to.
But I think that most of us went along with it. We thought that somehow Saddam Hussein was this evil tyrant and he had to be stopped.
Well, again, because that's the propaganda we were fed.
Sexed up dossier.
Sexed up dossier, and we all, yeah, absolutely.
That was the equivalent of sage modelling, wasn't it?
No,
Rebecca.
I mean, this is before my time. I was like prepubescent during this period. So
I don't think I need that detail.
Sorry, but
Rebecca,
I don't really know what happened with Iraq.
It's a family show, you know. I've got kids watching.
Is it? What I would say is I think people have a depressingly short memory. You said earlier, Boris Johnson, Partygate, people are like, oh, he's doing his best. I think people get over things really surprisingly quickly, and I think people will get over this really quickly.
I disagree. I disagree that this is his Churchill moment. I think I will never forgive Boris Johnson for what he put this country through and the hypocrisy of do as we say, don't do as we do.
I mean, you're right.
It depends. Here's what will happen.
We've had less COVID theatre from Boris.
It depends what happens. Like right just now, it's like COVID, Brexit and everything else didn't happen because we're all talking about this war.
Yeah.
It's about the journey that the country goes on. And of course, it's very easy to talk about who did what with the benefit of hindsight. What would it look like when you have to deal with it? And of course, remember, if you're upset about what Boris did, about what Putin's done, remember, people will argue their side of the argument. Let's see who wins that argument.
Well, you raise a great question, by the way. Whatever happened to that deadly pandemic? Hashtag asking for a friend. What's your thought on this? Mark at gbnews.uk. Are you sick of this COVID theatre? Or do you think that photograph of the two politicians masked up was actually the responsible thing to do? Still to come, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe gives her response to the Ukrainian president's renewed call for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. So should there be one? Anne says there should. I say no. We'll debate that shortly. But up next in the clash, as polls suggest that Boris Johnson has bounced back from the aforementioned Partygate, will Ukraine prove to be his Falklands moment and secure his place at number 10 for years to come? We'll hear from all sides on that one. Let me know what you think, Mark at gbnews.uk. Tweet us at gbnews, and you can vote in our poll as well. Really busy show. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Putin is playing the long game, says Elwood. Conscripts and old equipment, Ukraine will have to prepare for a long war. You never get over seeing those dead children. Well, you're right about that, Elwood. How about this on Boris? Dear Mark, I 100% agree with Dawn Neeson on your panel. I cannot praise Boris no matter what. I will never forgive him. Strong views there. We're going to talk about Boris right now because it's time for The Clash. Yes, this is The Clash, a moment in the show in which we tackle a major news story of the day from multiple points of view. According to a poll by Redfield and Wootton Strategies, the Prime Minister appears to have put the Partygate scandal behind him. His perceived strong performance in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine has seen his personal approval ratings jump by 11% in just a week, although the Conservatives do still trail the Labour Party anywhere between 3 and 8 percentage points, depending on which poll you look at. But it's clearly a boost for the PM. Here is Chris Curtis, head of political polling at Opinion Research, speaking to our very own Tom Harwood earlier today.
Going to see some more polls out in the coming days, but I think initially it does show that Boris Johnson's approval ratings look like they're going to bounce back in response to Ukraine. I suppose to a certain extent that should be expected. It moves the conversation away from Partygate and towards an area that's a lot better for the Conservatives and the Conservative Party brand, defence and national security. And also it gives the Prime Minister the opportunity to look prime ministerial and strong again after those scandals that have plagued his leadership.
So do these personal poll numbers suggest that Boris has bounced back from the worst crisis of his premiership? Is talk of a leadership contest now out of the window? And is Boris Johnson here to stay? Could Ukraine be his Falklands moment? Well, you know I love hearing what you have to say, so drop me a line right now, mark@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at GBNews and do vote in our Twitter poll. But first, to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome journalist and social commentator Angela Epstein. Great to see you again, Angela. Broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov. I've been a fan of Nina's for a long, long time. And a good friend of mine, political commentator Suzanne Evans. Nina, if I could start with you, is Boris here to stay?
Well, I sincerely hope not. The fact is that polls can say anything, and he's still way below. And people do not forget that easily. He is a man who's created a government that has produced such appalling results. We have a defence secretary who was completely humiliated in Moscow, who can't tell the Baltic from the Black Sea. You had the previous one who presided over the disaster of Afghanistan while being on the beach, and is now the deputy prime minister. So this is just a government that's just awful, and it's completely his fault because this is what he's chosen. Plus, he has, watching Zelensky in Parliament today, broadcast in Parliament, there is a man, there is a leader. He has morals, he has honour, he has courage. And I look at Boris, the greased piglet, and he must have been almost hoping for this war to happen so that he could move into his Thatcher moment. I mean, if he could have got himself into the blue frock and the pearls and stood in a tank, I'm sure he'd have tried it. People will also not forget what he did. They say Partygate, oh, who cares about it? There's far greater things to worry about. But Partygate goes to the heart of who he is, and he absolutely cheated on this country. He cheated on this country by cheating on the laws that he made himself. And all the hundreds of thousands of people who have been bereaved will never forget, and the rest of us won't forget either.
Suzanne Evans, is Nina Mishkov right? Is Boris Johnson still damaged goods?
Well, I think Nina's right and wrong. I think to say that Boris Johnson wanted this war to save his reputation is a quite ridiculous thing to say, to be honest. But there's no doubt that after Partygate, where his poll ratings were absolutely at rock bottom, and if you look at the progress of the opinion polls over the whole COVID pandemic and going forward to the war in Ukraine, that was absolutely his low point. And I agree, it's a complete scandal. I think I'm with what Dawn Neeson said earlier on that one. I'm not quite sure I can personally forgive him for that one. But now there's no doubt now that this war has come along. As you say, it is in a sense this Falkland moment. There is nothing like a crisis to actually give a leader a renewed sense of purpose and a new moral mission. And there's no doubt that that's done that. And to be fair, as someone who's been critical of Boris Johnson in the past, he has risen to the challenge on this. There's no doubt about that. He was leading, in a sense, the world response to sanctions on Ukraine. He was the one pushing for the ban on the SWIFT financial transactions. He was the one that, Britain's already done quite a lot. Since the Salisbury poisoning in 2018, Britain has been pretty much at the forefront, really, of giving support to the Ukrainian army. I've trained, I think, 22,000 troops, among other things. So he's looking like he's got a good track record on this, although, of course, that's probably not his decision alone. I think he is coming out of the woods. That leadership talk is not going to be happening when you're in a war situation. That has definitely been kicked into the long grass. Of course, the big question is, what happens when, hopefully, this war is over, party politics starts to resume as normal? Will the knives then come out for Boris Johnson again? That remains to be seen. But at the moment, I think all talk of that is completely dead in the water.
Angela Epstein.
I loathe this game of competitive suffering and all the badging of, is it his Falklands moment? Is it his Mrs. Thatcher moment? It's a world global crisis moment. We've been talking about teetering on the brink of nuclear war. Is it World War III? The ramifications of this crisis, without wishing to catastrophize, are massive. And the idea of debating tea and cake and Prosecco, whilst absolutely understanding the heartache that was caused by the flouting of the rules from those who experienced, terrible deprivation and being separated from their relatives, completely understand it, completely understand the optics of it and all of those things. But at the moment, we need a leader who can step up and lead front and centre, consolidate his credentials as an international statesman, lead the global effort to bring down Putin. We've not had the conclusion of the Sue Gray report. We've not had the completion of the investigation by the Met. All of these things are not, like I say, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not that, one good, one bad, or we debate one at the exclusion of another. But at this moment in time, at the point of sale, we need a leader who can function on the world stage. What we think about him before or afterwards, Churchill was very unpopular before the war and after the war, but boy, did we need him during the war to stave off Hitler. So I think it's I understand all the concerns about Boris, but I think what will happen is we will judge it in the context of how this awful situation plays out. And at the moment, I think we have a leader with credibility, who is visiting other world leaders, who's got his 6-point plan, which may be more soundbite than actual practical consideration. But who would fill the vacuum anyway? I mean, we don't need to be diverted by a leadership contest, but if we were, which would be the stupidest thing that anybody could do at the in, who would fill that vacuum anyway?
What a damning indictment that after 11 or how many years it is that the Conservatives have been in power, there is nobody, they can't field a single person that could be a leader. It's absolutely shocking. But while we're talking about Boris leading the way, his 6-point plan is piffle, basically, as probably in his words. He also is a disgrace in that he hasn't got a minister in Priti Patel who has a shred of humanity. We are an absolute disgrace as far as taking in Ukrainian refugees. It's shocking. Added to which, Boris is so mired in his neck up to here with rubles. And, Abramovich is all of these plutocrats, all these oligarchs are being given plenty of chance to slide away, to sell their properties, to get the money. Is Boris going to give back the £2 million that has been donated to the Conservative Party in the last 2 years? I think probably not. We want a leader we can trust who can actually lead. We don't want a karaoke Churchill. This is just ridiculous.
Nina. The Conservative Party and the Cabinet in particular is overflowing with potential candidates to be Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, Ben Wallace, who has been incredibly decisive and shown great leadership in these short 2 weeks of war. What about our trade deal queen, Liz Truss, who has wowed the country with her trade deals in the course of
while the country
renewed freedom.
While the country with their Instagram pictures, as I said, can't tell the difference between the Baltic and the Black Sea, was completely humiliated in Moscow, and in fact was mentioned by Putin as one of the people who's kind of escalating things by actually sort of supporting people who wanted to go and fight as mercenaries. I mean, you couldn't make it up.
Now, Nina, let's
talk
about the Prime Minister. I agree with you that Partygate was a disgrace. I await the conclusions of it, but it was clearly a chaotic situation at number 10 and deeply hypocritical. I'll give you that. But I would take a chaotic Prime Minister as long as he's somebody that makes the right judgment call. And this is a Prime Minister that kept Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10. He's got a mandate to lead for 5 years. He got Brexit done. He ended our Brexit purgatory, didn't he? Also, he ignored sage scientists. He didn't cancel Christmas. Cases fell. He was responsible for Freedom Day. This is a Prime Minister that gets the big calls right.
None of these things will I applaud, and certainly not Brexit. And we're talking about COVID, and cases have gone up, deaths have gone up by 10% in the last week. So it's not over. Just because it's not being reported on a daily basis doesn't mean it's gone. And if you read the Mail online today, you will see the deaths have gone up.
Nina Mishkov, Sage told the Prime Minister that there would be 6,000 deaths from Omicron a day if he didn't cancel Christmas. Cases fell.
I'm not here to defend Sage. I'm here to talk about Boris Johnson.
Well, he ignored Sage and he was proved right. That's my kind of Prime Minister.
Well, that's entirely up to you. As far as I know, this is still a democracy. We can all make our own choices, but I choose not. And I think there are a lot of people who don't choose that. You're talking about start this debate with polls. The latest YouGov poll showed that people still think that Boris is 69% of people think that he's indecisive for a start. You don't want he dithers, he blusters, and then he finally makes a decision. You don't need an indecisive leader. Back in November, Boris Johnson stood up in Parliament on his hind legs and in trying to justify money for more cyber defence, which is a perfectly valid thing. He said, "I think we're all just going to have to realise that a land war in Europe is never going to happen again." Now, that was November. He's a historian. He's a politician. He could have seen this coming, but he stood there only 3 months ago and said there won't be a land war in Europe.
Well, what about the leader of the opposition who campaigned for the Kremlin-loving Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, a man who sided with the Russians over the Salisbury attack?
Nobody's... Who would have...
I mean, that's much worse, isn't it?
I didn't... No, it's not. I didn't vote for Corbyn. I would never vote for Corbyn. Corbyn was one of the two big disasters that happened to our country in 2019. One was Jeremy Corbyn. The other was Boris Johnson. And Keith Starmer, as a Labour Party member, the only way he could get to a position of leadership was to join the Labour Party and to work himself up. Well, that's what they all do. Doesn't mean to say that he wanted... He's spent his time getting rid of Corbyn, saying, "I am not Corbyn. I do not believe what Corbyn thinks."
Before trying to get Jeremy Corbyn elected as Prime Minister and being the architect of Labour's Brexit policy, which lost them the election. Look, Suzanne, what do you think about this? What are the percentage chances of Boris Johnson leading the Tories into the next election?
0.
It's quite some way off, but I think it's probably quite high, I suspect. It's interesting, Nina was quoting polls saying that people don't trust Boris. If you look today at the latest YouGov poll, actually he is now a more popular choice for PM than Keir Starmer. I think Boris, 39% of people would choose Boris Johnson, whereas only 35% of people would choose Keir Starmer. So certainly if there was a general election tomorrow, I don't have any doubt, actually, that Boris Johnson would be returned to number 10 Downing Street. This is the way it is. This is how politics works. Leaders come, they go, they have peaks, they have troughs. Boris Johnson is arguably one of the most Teflon of the lot. He's had more lives than a cat. He seems to bounce back at every opportunity. And as I say, it's been shown time and time again throughout history. There is nothing better, very cynically, and I wish I didn't have to say these words, but very often there is nothing better than a war that to give an opportunity for a leader to respond and to boost his popularity ratings. But as I said before, to suggest that Boris Johnson did that deliberately is ridiculous.
Briefly, Angela Epstein, do you think that Ukraine will save Boris Johnson, and do you think he can recalibrate and reset his premiership and become a great prime minister?
Well, I hope it can. I mean, he exercises and energises people in equal measure. But what we're seeing now is the most terrible human catastrophe. We're seeing innocent people being slain, blood being shed, and it's all so stupid and so needless. And if that doesn't press the reset button on all of us to think about what's important in life, the sanctity of human life, the brevity of human life, and to understand that as human beings, I mean, I don't wish to sound woolly, but these are the things that matter more than anything else. And if Boris Johnson has an opportunity as our leader, the leader of this country, to have a ringside seat as well as an influential role in the suffering that's going on in Ukraine, I sincerely hope that that is enough to focus the mind on somebody who has the privilege of leading this country into being the best prime minister that they can be.
Briefly, Nina Mishkov, do you think Boris Johnson leads the Tories into the next election?
Zero chance of that. Zero chance of that. I'm convinced he won't.
Is that wishful thinking on your part?
It's wishful thinking on my part, but I think people are not stupid. People will have seen through him. And what's more, this war, which is supposed to be assisting him, if that's what we're discussing, what he has failed to recognise that everybody has been thinking like Angela does, like everybody does, as a human being. And the amount of money that the British public are wonderful. They've always given, so much money, even when they can't afford it. They've given, such a huge amount of money, and they care about it. And yet, this government, this Prime Minister, and Priti Patel will not open our borders to these people. It's an absolute disgrace. It's a shame. We are the shame of the world, and he leads the government, and the blame must fall on him.
My deep thanks to social commentator Angela Epstein, broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov, and political commentator Suzanne Evans. Thank you so much for your time. A fascinating conversation. Well, what do you think? Mick on email says Boris never really went away over Partygate. He's a natural leader. The next election will, in my humble opinion, be another landslide. But John on Twitter says Boris will be annihilated at the next election. So he backs up what Nina had to say there. He'll be annihilated if he's still hanging around like a very bad smell. He is utterly atrocious. And finally, Yvonne on email says, I think Boris is doing a brilliant job. I dread to think what it would be like with Starmer. Well, your verdict is in terms of our Twitter poll. 78% of you take the view that Boris is going nowhere. That's right, 78% of you back Boris. 22% say the Prime Minister may still lose his job. Well, it's all about opinions, lots more to come, including after a Churchillian speech from the Ukrainian president to the House of Commons, we get an expert response from political firebrand Anne Widdecombe after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Your guest, that rabid Mishkov, could hardly string a sentence together. She was so triggered. Mark says, regarding the clash, Nina Mishkov is just another loser lefty. Excuse after excuse for Labour. What is the point in her breathing? Well, Mark, I certainly want her to keep breathing, but obviously you disagree with what she said, and it is all about opinions. How about this? What on earth is that incompetent, make it up as I go along idiot doing on GB News? Why didn't the others show her up for the bumbling fool she is? Well, look, what I want to do on the show, Rod, and I understand you don't agree with Nina, but I want to hear all views on the show because no one's got a monopoly on the truth or on wisdom, and we're here to debate. And I thank you for your message on that one too. Yeah, not too many emails in support of Nina, I would have to say. How about this from Richard? I would like to know who Nina thinks would replace Boris in the Conservative Party. So how about this? Oh, yes, and Joseph as well. I'll get to your comments on Vladimir Putin shortly. But breaking tonight, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has delivered a historic address to the House of Commons. The president channeled Winston Churchill in his speech, comparing Ukraine's fight against Russia to Britain's World War II struggle against Nazi Germany. He was given a standing ovation by MPs both before and after, as he reiterated his unwavering determination to fight.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end, at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
Well, I thought it was a very moving and powerful speech. Joining me now to discuss it is the formidable former Conservative Minister, Anne Widdecombe. Anne, welcome to the show. What did you make of his speech in the Commons via video link?
Well, I thought it was terrific, and you're quite right. It had huge echoes, deliberate echoes of Churchill. I think he was trying to appeal to our own wartime spirit. And perhaps hoping we might get a bit more involved as a result of that. But it was a very brave speech from a very brave man.
Do you think he will prevail, Anne?
I think it not impossible. I mean, one's got to be reasonable at this. You know, Russia's got tremendous force. Probably in the long term, it can wear Ukraine down. But what it hasn't had is the easiest victory that it thought it was going to have. And of course, there is an immense difference, as people have been pointing out, but I don't think have been focused so much on it. There's a huge difference between winning an occupation and actually then sustaining that occupation. And I don't think, if the spirit of the Ukrainians is anything to go by, I don't think they're easily going to do that. So, yes, it is possible that Russia could lose this one, and I think Putin's waking up to that.
Anne, you sat in the House of Commons from 1987 to 2010. Can you tell me about the significance of a foreign president addressing the House in that way?
Well, it's unprecedented. It was an amazing performance, but it was also an amazing historical event. Now, presidents do come from other countries and they do address the House of Commons, but not in the chamber, never in the chamber. So this was something quite unprecedented, and in the circumstances of the time, something that united Parliament. I mean, I didn't see anybody shaking their head.
Was it the right thing to do, to break with parliamentary protocol in that way?
Yes. Yes. I mean, we are in a very, very abnormal situation. It demands an abnormal response. And I think we should see this repeated in legislatures around the world, because I think the message will get home to Putin. I say Putin carefully because unfortunately, even now, too many Russians believe the nonsense that he is talking. And that is one of the most difficult things. If we're hoping that eventually they get fed up with Putin at home, they've got to start disbelieving him first. And at the moment, too many of them don't.
And Anne, in the President's speech to the House of Commons, he effectively asked the West to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. This means that if a Russian jet were to fly over Ukraine, that it would be shot out of the sky by NATO, which many people fear would trigger World War III. What's your view about the enforcement of a no-fly zone over Ukraine?
I would absolutely love to be able to give the president that. I really would love NATO to be able to do that. But I think we've got to keep cool heads. And the fact is that if we shot a Russian plane out of the sky, that is an act of war. That's an act of war. We would be effectively declaring war on Russia. And don't forget that the senior partner in NATO is the United States. A horror for years now has been the thought of Russia and the United States engaging in war, which could so easily escalate to nuclear. We thought all that had gone with the Cold War. It had not. And now we mustn't go rushing in where angels fear to tread. And I hate saying that because I think he's so brave, and I think we should give him masses more military equipment than we're actually giving at the moment. I think we should give him every last thing that we can. We can't start shooting down Russian planes.
Anne, you served under Mrs. Thatcher and, of course, John Major and others. What's your appraisal of the Prime Minister's handling of this crisis?
I think some of it has been very good and very decisive. He led the way on sanctions, for example, which I think is good. Gave a very good lead to the rest of the world. I think his response to the humanitarian crisis has been exceptionally poor. We keep being told that, the situation is in hand and we've got the necessary procedures. But the fact is we then saw reporters at Calais where there were no procedures at all, just a couple of officials standing around not doing much, and people being told, well, no, actually, they've got to go to Paris. Now, we saw this sort of muddle with the Afghan interpreters and the evacuation of Afghanistan. You would have thought we might have learned something from that, but it appears civil servants are still working from home. And ministers do not know what is happening on the ground. They're being assured that there is a system in place. There ain't no system in place. It's appalling.
In other news, Anne, this concerning the House of Commons today as well, an independent inquiry has found former Speaker John Bercow, who I don't imagine is on your Christmas card list, to be a serial bully and liar. Take a look at this, Anne. OK. During his decade as Speaker, Bercow became famous for his bellowing voice and theatricals in the Commons, but it turns out there was little order in his treatment of work colleagues behind chamber doors. Responding to the report, Mr Bercow has denied bullying staff, saying this has been a protracted, amateurish and unjust process which would not have survived 5-minute scrutiny in court. To describe what I have experienced as a kangaroo court is grossly insulting to kangaroos. Anne, your reaction?
Well, first of all, I do think in the interest of justice, I mean, this is not to defend him, but in the interest of justice, he should have a full right of appeal. We should have a legal eagle looking at those processes and looking at the evidence and either confirming or rejecting the findings. If the findings are indeed confirmed, then obviously he must face up to the consequences. As I've been saying to everybody, John used to work for me when I was in the shadow cabinet. He did extremely well. I didn't have anything against him, but it does look as if since he became Speaker, he's just gone completely AWOL.
Well, yes, I mean, he did everything within his power to reverse Brexit, didn't he? Including going against parliamentary protocol, setting precedent after precedent.
Yes, but the point was that he picked and he chose. So one moment he would say, sorry, can't do anything about this because I'm bound by parliamentary precedent. And then the next moment he would say, well, parliamentary precedent is there as guidance, but you can set up a precedent. So he just went whichever way he wanted to go. He was very anti-Brexit, and I'm afraid that he allowed it, and I think deliberately allowed it, to show and to influence his actions. And that has alienated a lot of people, including Remainers.
Yes, and possibly placed Parliament into disrepute as well. It might have provoked a democratic crisis if the Prime Minister hadn't won the election in 2019. You knew the guy before all of this, before he became Speaker. What changed, Anne? What went wrong?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what happened at all. Maybe he was completely, discomforted by Brexit. I just don't know. But he was a great disappointment. Glad in the end that he went to the Labour Party. But they don't appear to want him anymore either.
And finally, it's International Women's Day. Do we still need this celebration?
International Women's Day? Well, can we have an International Men's Day? I hate what I consider this patronising attitude that women need their own everything. Now, in fact, when I was fighting for equality in the 1970s, I meant equality. And I meant that we should all be the same. We've got a minister for women. Now, some people say, let's have a minister for men. No, don't have a minister for either. We're all supposed to be equal, aren't we?
What a perfect answer. Anne, a thrill to have you on the show. I know you'll be back in a week's time with Dan. A fascinating conversation. What's your reaction to what Anne Widdecombe had to say? Mark at gbnews.uk. Thank you so much, Anne. Lots more to get through in the show. I want to hear from you as well via email. Let's catch up on a couple of emails while we can. Such a big reaction to our conversation around Boris Johnson. Paul says Boris has redeemed himself in my eyes. And if you don't believe me, I forwarded my email to GB News around Christmas time. By the way, I know you have to have balance, but that old bat Nina is a Ramoning sad old bint who belongs in a care home. My goodness, you're not pulling your punches in regards to Nina. Well, look, it is all about opinions. I've known Nina a long time, a fabulous journalist. I'm a big fan of hers, but lots of you don't agree with what she had to say, and that's fair enough. So look, a very busy hour to come. Don't go anywhere. The email is mark at gbnews.uk. My big opinion monologue is now available on Twitter in case you missed it earlier, and I'll see you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
An enthusiastic response to my conversation with political legend Anne Widdecombe, of course, a former Conservative minister. She entered the House of Commons in 1987. under Margaret Thatcher, and lots of support for what she had to say about Ukraine, about Boris, and about International Women's Day. She thinks it's nonsense. Well, I'll discuss that with my amazing panel shortly. But Yvonne Bellamy says, I love Anne. She would have made a great PM. She always talks sense. We need people of Anne Widdecombe's calibre in politics now, says Derek, not the lacklustre cretins that we have to put up with. You guys you're very fiery tonight, aren't you? You're not pulling your punches, and I love it. So keep your emails coming. We've saved our best till last, folks. A really busy final hour of the show. It is 1 minute past 10. It's Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. And breaking tonight, the UK is set to punish Putin's regime further by phasing out Russian oil imports by the end of the year. We'll have more expert analysis from Ukraine in the next hour. Are Russia guilty of war crimes? We'll cross to Kiev and get top human rights lawyer Alexandra Matovachuk's take on that one. Plus, I'll speak to the American woman who went to Kharkiv to celebrate her mother's 85th birthday, but ended up in a war zone. She joins me to tell her amazing story of how she escaped Putin's tanks. I'll sit down with ex-Marine Colonel Stuart Scheller. This guy's amazing. He was fired from the US military for criticising Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal, and he shares his exclusive views on the Ukraine conflict in Uncancelled at 10:40. And it's the million-dollar question that I'll be putting to him and my panel, and I'm putting to you. Do we enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine and risk World War III? Mark at gbnews.uk. As several companies are criticised for shallow virtue signalling on International Women's Day, does that day still mean anything? Plus, does the government's burning of mountain loads of unusable COVID PPE prove we overreacted to the virus? We'll debate all of those topics in the media buzz. Plus, I'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers. And I'll be crowning another Greatest Britain and Union jackass at 10:50. But first, the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. The top stories tonight. Ukraine's president has told British MPs his country will fight to the end, echoing the British war leader Sir Winston Churchill in his address today. As you can hear, Volodymyr Zelensky was met with a standing ovation from the House of Commons as he appeared in the chamber via video link. It's the first time a president of another country has addressed the main Westminster chamber. And he thanked Boris Johnson personally for supporting Ukraine, but he asked for more help in the war with Russia.
We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
The president of Ukraine. Well, the UK and the United States have announced a ban on Russian oil imports in an attempt to put pressure on Vladimir Putin. Britain is to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of the year, and America says it will also ban gas imports, with US President Joe Biden claiming it'll be a powerful blow to Russia's economy. Here, the Prime Minister says it'll punish Putin's regime.
The economic impact of the sanctions that the UK has led has been extreme, and the Russian stock market hasn't opened for the last week, or almost a week. The ruble has tanked, and the noose is tightening.
And perhaps most significantly today, Poland has, within the last few hours, agreed to hand over all its MiG-29 fighter jets to the United States ahead of a likely transfer to Ukraine. It's part of a plan to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian armed forces. But it comes amid warnings from Russia of significant consequences for any country hosting Ukrainian aircraft. The Polish government says the planes are ready to deploy immediately and will be free of charge. And they're also now calling on NATO to follow its lead. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister says 5,000 civilians have managed to get out of Ukraine. It's the first successful humanitarian corridor that's opened up since the start of Russia's invasion, created under a temporary ceasefire. The United Nations Refugee Agency estimates the number of people leaving the country has now reached 2 million. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps, has announced he's made it a criminal offence for any Russian aircraft to enter UK airspace, adding the government can now detain jets. Starbucks is yet another organisation this evening to announce it's suspending business in Russia. The coffee giant said it would provide support to the near 2,000 partners over there. It follows Coca-Cola and McDonald's, who earlier today announced they were also pausing operations in Russia as part of an isolation plan for Moscow. The fast food chain said it would continue paying salaries to its 62,000 McDonald's employees. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now let's get back to Mark Dolan, sitting in for Dan Wootton tonight.
Dan Wootton is back tomorrow at 9. I want to thank you so much for all of the emails you've sent me over the last few days whilst I've been in the hot seat for Dan. It's been a privilege to look after the show. And as I say, he returns at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. And I'm back on Friday at 9 as well. And of course, all weekend. By the way, a bit of kind of production news. My fantastic director, Daryl, celebrated his birthday yesterday. And the show was so busy and we had breaking stories. There wasn't really time to mention it. But he's brilliant at what he does, and we're very fond of him, and we wish him a very happy birthday. It's quite good that we've wished him a happy birthday today, because he's sobered up now and actually knows what I'm saying. But yeah, happy birthday, Daryl. We've got the most amazing team here at GB News. What you see on screen is like 1% of it. Tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. I'm always late with everything, including birthdays. Let's kick off with the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. The Metro. Hear, hear, hero. Standing ovation for Ukraine leaders' historic speech to MPs. And what an arresting photograph that is. Unprecedented, as described by Anne Widdecombe just earlier in the show. The I newspaper, we will fight in the forest and on the streets. Evoking, of course, the tone and terminology of the great Winston Churchill. Quite a few emails coming in. It was a very busy hour, and we debated so many things, particularly no-fly zones for Ukraine. And Sue speaks for many when she says, Mark, no, sadly, a no-fly zone cannot be considered. As has been said many times, it could or would lead to World War III. How about Alan, who says no to a no-fly zone, keep arming, including planes, to Ukraine. On Anne Widdecombe, Dean says, what a legend she is. I wouldn't want to be on her wrong side. She's straight talking and totally correct in her views. Glennis says, Boris Johnson is helping Ukraine the best he can. I believe Priti Patel should be replaced. She can't do her job, saying that the refugees need to be checked to prove who they are when she has let thousands of young men in who have no paperwork at all. Give them top priority and sack civil servants who are still working from home. How about this on Zelensky? Mark, is Zelensky prepared for the consequences of dragging Europe into a wider war, and what would be the resulting human suffering of that, Roy? Roy, I agree with you, and that was one of the themes of my monologue, which you can now see on Twitter if you missed it earlier at GB News. How about this finally on Boris? And this is from Anonymous. You're wrong, Mark. It wasn't Boris who decided to cancel the COVID restrictions. He was forced to by backbenchers. Also, did you not see Boris Johnson's Sunday night speech about Omicron? He frightened the whole country, saying it was an emergency. He had no intention of cancellation of COVID. He then realised his political career was flailing. As for the Brexit deal, it's shocking. Still in human rights, ruined Northern Ireland, fisheries, and so on. Well, look, thank you for that. It is all about opinions. And finally, we were just talking about International Women's Day. Simon says, Dear Mark, please can we have a special minister for old, bald Welshmen? Simon, I'm sure you're not that bold. And don't forget, it worked well for Bruce Willis. My superstar panel are back with me. Former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, former London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Rebecca Reed. It is International Women's Day, which means that, like clockwork, Brands and companies are flocking to social media to post about womanhood and female empowerment. The only problem is very few businesses practice what they preach, particularly when it comes to the ever-widening discrepancy in wages between men and women. Well, a ruthless Twitter account called Gender Pay Gap Bot is calling them out by quote tweeting virtuous IWD, that's International Women's Day, posts, along with the company's gender pay gap data. The expert trolling has even led some companies going back and deleting their posts rather than face criticism. I mean, they really are such cowards, aren't they? So it raises the question, with the day awash with empty sentiments, do we need International Women's Day? Rebecca.
So this is a big topic for me. I have a lot of feelings. First of all, I would like to point out, Anne Widdecombe said, well, why can't we have an International Men's Day? We can. It's November 19th. I look forward to all of you celebrating it in November. Secondarily, to the person who said, can we have one for old, bald Welshmen? I don't think we need one for bald Welshmen, but for older people, ageism is a very real problem, and we probably should have a day where we talk about ageism. But today is International Women's Day, so let's talk about that today. We know that women still have a lot of very specific challenges. Every 2.4 days, a woman in the UK is murdered by a man. That's quite a lot of murders, and that's quite a big deal.
It's appalling.
It's not good news, is it? And in terms of the pay gap, I think it's a very complicated topic, and I think people misunderstand it. It's not that I feel that I am paid the exact less than somebody doing the exact same job as me. That's illegal. What happens is, partially because women tend to bear the childbearing responsibilities, and partially because the top jobs in companies tend to be taken by men, or inhabited by men, not taken, that's a bit mean, it skews the data. If you look at the pay gap bot, it is extraordinary. There are people putting up pictures of women being like, we're so lucky, look at the 7 women we got from our office. And then it turns out that their pay gap is 63%. It is extraordinary. How nobody thought to check that data internally, I cannot question. But special thanks to Young's, the brewery, with a 70-something% pay gap.
Things have got to change. Does this day change anything?
I don't think it does. I think it's become a marketing day, and I've sort of hated it a lot today. When it first, sort of 10 years ago, when I was a little baby feminist, I used to find it quite exciting. Now it's largely people putting very flattering pictures of themselves up with other women, celebrating. It shouldn't be a day of celebration, it should be a day of protest. It should be a day of going, this is what's wrong, let's fix it. Not, oh, this is a nice picture of me.
Dawn, you prevailed in a very male-dominated world, which was journalism, particularly in the 90s, and you became editor, top dog at The Star. How did you achieve that?
Just by being a very good journalist. It was nothing to do with my sex or my gender or whatever the terminology is.
Must have been harder, though, being a female.
You know what? I never thought about it, Mark.
I bet they did, though.
They possibly did, but it wasn't a conversation I ever had with anyone. I just got on with my job and tried to do the best job I could. Did I have to be better than the men doing the same job? I was in any case. So whether I had to or not...
Did you ever sense pushback from male colleagues in terms of promotions or even pay?
You know what? Interestingly, the main pushback I got was because of my class, not my sex. I was very aware that...
Snobbery.
Snobbery, yeah, because there was a lot of class snobbery involved. And, you know, I've worked on red top tabloids all my life. But I do expect with some of the broadsheet titles, then women like me would not have been that acceptable. But, I mean, I agree with Rebecca on this. I mean, you know, International Women's Day, it is virtue signalling. It is sort of like people making statements. It's companies flogging stuff, which is very, very annoying. However, I will disagree on the fact that I do think it is now becoming more important again, where women are being cancelled now. I mean, I put a tweet out earlier on saying, you know, happy people with cervix day, or women as we used to be called. But now women is almost a swear word. So I think it's very important to talk about what women are, what our role is.
A lot of people have been saying happy Biological Women's Day. Sean, people feel the need to put that caveat in now.
I think the biggest thing we should do is get rid of all this virtue signalling. Virtue signalling should be a criminal offence. And Women's Day has been...
Isn't saying that sort of virtue signalling?
No, but it's been...
About how anti-woke you are.
No, let's be clear. There's no part of me that needs to prove that I'm anti-woke. The thing is this, isn't it? International Women's Day has been important for women, and it's been kidnapped by people virtue signalling. Let's go back and use it, as you say, as a day of protest. Let's go back and use it as a day to highlight the particular challenges that women have.
I think that's a really brilliant point. Well, it is International Women's Day, so let's take a moment to salute the brave women of Ukraine who are showing the world what true bravery and resilience looks like.
We were expecting the attack, that our TV stations will be attacked, and we had a backup plan to resume. The only thing we care now about is to survive and for our country to survive, you know.
I'm on a Putin's kill list, and I totally understand what that means. I'm happy that I am able to train right now and be able to protect my family, my house, my city, and my country.
If someone told me a week ago I would own an assault rifle, I would not believe. But that is the new reality. This is my city, this is my land. I have to protect it, just like thousands of Ukrainians are doing right now. It's like my boyfriend he is with the army, my dad joined the territorial defense. So just like thousands of other Ukrainians, being a citizen in Ukraine right now means that we are protecting our country.
Rebecca, what an incredible video. What an amazing set of accounts.
It is amazing. And also, I'm not saying this to suck up, but like some of the interviews that GBNews has done over the last couple of weeks with women in Ukraine have been genuinely astonishing. I think sometimes we get a bad rap here, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done with bringing women's voices into this conversation.
Well, yeah, and you are a lifelong feminist, and your voice is a very important part of the GB mix as well. Coming up, did the government overreact to COVID? Well, the fact that they're burning mountain loads of unusable PPE would suggest so. My panel and I will debate that in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Did we overreact to the pandemic? But next, we're crossing to Kiev to hear from a human rights lawyer taking on the question about whether Russia is guilty of war crimes. Plus, I'll speak to the American woman who went to Kharkiv to celebrate her mother's 85th birthday, but ended up in a war zone. Two incredible stories. You won't want to miss them.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Breaking tonight, Ukraine has claimed that Russian forces have shelled an evacuation route out of the besieged city of Mariupol. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry's spokesman Oleg Nikolenko said refugees trying to escape through humanitarian corridors between the city and Zaporizhia came under attack. These accusations follow reports that Germany and the US have opened investigations into potential Russian war crimes after targeting civilian targets and nuclear power stations. To get more on this, I'm joined by Kyiv-based top human rights lawyer Oleksandra Matvichuk. And Oleksandra, thank you for joining us. Is Putin guilty of war crimes?
Yeah,
Yes, for sure. Because when we look to the chain of command, this chain of command will lead to Putin and his surrounding.
And how hard will it be to enforce any legal action against Vladimir Putin?
For current moment, we have only one mechanism which provides us a chance to prosecute Putin individually. It's International Criminal Court in Hague. But also there is an initiative to establish International Hybrid Tribunal. If it happens, it will be also a possibility. But now we are worried how to stop this war crime, because international justice is very delayed in time, but people are suffering and dying now, in this moment.
Is gathering evidence of war crimes easier in the smartphone era?
We gathered evidence in different way, and now our task is to gather as more as possible. For current moment, we have no time to analyze it. We try to collect them. Because now it's possible to do through photo, videos, testimonies of witness, and gather some stuff through the ground.
Alexandra, what is the difference between a war crime and fighting a war?
Even if you have a war, you have to follow the rule of the war. This rule. It's called international humanitarian law. But unfortunately, Russia used war crimes as a technology of conducting war. I have been documented war crimes for 8 years already, since the time when Russia occupied Crimea, started a hybrid war in the Donbass. And I know for sure that it's a deliberate policy of Russia.
Do you think that Vladimir Putin will one day face justice?
Yes, if he will not end his life as a Hitler and in one shot in bunker.
And Alexandra, what's the situation in the capital at the moment? What is the spirit of the people?
We are ready to fight and to resist and to save our town and our country from the Russian soldiers and Russian troops. We are preparing for a massive attack because Russians try to circle town. And we ask West to assist us in a weapon, because we need weapon to provide effective response.
Alexandra, I hope we get to speak again. Do take care. Alexandra Matvichuk is a human rights lawyer and the head of the Centre for Civil Liberties. Thank you for joining us. Well, let's move on now to my next guest, who went to Kharkiv in Ukraine to celebrate her 85-year-old mother's birthday, but ended up trapped in a war zone. Valentina Barsukova was forced to flee after the city became the front line of Putin's invasion, as parts of her mother's life, like her local supermarket, were hit by Russian shells, and her neighbours lost their lives. Valentina, who took this footage as she frantically fled, managed to eventually escape the horrors of war, but was forced to leave her mother behind. And I'm very honoured to say that she joins me now. Hi, Valentina.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine, and I'm so sorry for what you've been through. Have you spoken to your mother in recent days?
Oh, yeah, I speak to her like every 2 hours. Yeah, of course.
And how is she doing, Valentina?
She's okay. She's staying at home, everything is closed. Like that little shop what you just show, it's shut down. So she cannot buy food. She cannot buy medicine. That's what she needs. And it's just the same shootings all day long, like explosions.
And Valentina, how close did you come to being stuck, being trapped in Ukraine?
We just could not, even get out of our house. It was no tech on the drive. So we had to, after 1 week, I really had to go home, and we had to pay big money to get to the train station. And get in the train, all these lines, and people very stressed there, like crying women and kids, and men not allowed to go. It was very difficult.
And
So
how
Thursday
how is your mother feeling in terms of the risks she now faces? Is your mum scared, Valentina?
She's older, you know, she went through second war, so she's okay. I'm scared for her. And I cannot bring her in United States because it's no refugee program. Like Europe is open, United States is not.
That's right.
I could
This
not
is
take-
you had no option but to leave her behind. And Valentina, that must have been torture for you emotionally.
It's very hard, very hard.
And what do you think about where this war is going? What do you think is going to happen, Valentina?
I don't know, we was hoping for short war. Not hoping, but that's what we were thinking. We didn't expect that. I would never go if I would think it's going to happen. And, but it's get very serious now, and a lot of people dying, and all my friends left, all my relatives left who's younger. They all went to Poland, Germany, you name it, Netherlands, everywhere.
And you're in the United States now, Valentina. What is your view, your opinion of the Western response to this invasion?
I'm very thankful for people who help, like refugee, yes. I'm very thankful for Poland people and for Lvov people. They help a lot. They don't take money. They drive you to the border. They feed you. They give you warm clothes. That was great, and I'm so appreciated. But it's a serious war, and a lot of people dying, a lot of people losing homes. Something needs to be done to stop it.
Finally, Valentina, can you tell me about the last conversation that you had with your mother in Ukraine before you left?
We just talk about, live day by day, and Mom, be careful. She likes to walk around, and Mom, just stay home, don't go outside, because it's shooting all the time. Tanks is everywhere. So, we was trying to be just calm, and because I don't know I'm going to see her again. Airports are closed, and so it's difficult. We was crying, of course. And
Well,
she's
Valentina,
all alone.
yeah. What was that, Valentina?
Yeah, I said my mom left, she's all alone now because all my relatives left. So that's tough.
And you just have phone, do you? And Skype? I mean, do you see her? Is it video calls? How do you communicate?
We Skype. Yeah, she has phone. She's computer programmer when she was younger, so she knows how to use Skype, and she's good in that. She has iPhone.
Well, Valentina, I know that I speak on behalf of all of my audience that we send our warmest wishes to you and your dear mother, who is in Ukraine now. You weren't able to take her with you to the United States. It's a horrific situation, and I just wish you and the family well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina, and we all pray for a swift end to this nightmare war. Valentina Barsukova there, speaking about her departure from Ukraine. She just got out in the nick of time, but she had to leave her mother behind. Coming up in Uncancelled, I'll sit down with ex-Marine Colonel Stuart Scheller. This guy was fired from the US military for criticising Joe Biden and his botched Afghanistan withdrawal. That's at 10:40. But next in the media buzz, does the government's burning of mountain loads of unusable COVID PPE, including masks, prove that we overreacted to the virus? We'll debate this shortly. Plus, we'll have a look at tomorrow's front pages.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, let's get to more front pages. The Guardian. Blow to Putin. Britain and US ban Russian oil. And that rather arresting photograph of a full House of Commons delivering a standing ovation to the Ukrainian president as he addressed the Commons via video link in an unprecedented move in the history of the House of Commons. The Sun newspaper. Queen's Guard AWOL to fight Vlad. A teenage Coldstream Guardsman has abandoned his post protecting the Queen to fight Mad Vlad's invaders in Ukraine. The soldier, who's 19, quit his Windsor barracks, left a note for his parents and booked a one-way ticket to Eastern Europe. Defence chiefs are trying to intercept him amid fears Russia could claim Britain has entered the war if he's caught. Crumbs, that's a worrying story, is it not? Zelensky's spirit of Churchill's speech as well, as reported by The Sun. The Independent now. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets. Head of State of Ukraine echoes Churchill in plea for UK to tackle Russia. And last but not least, the Daily Telegraph. Poland offers fighter jets for Ukraine. And Johnson considers lifting fracking ban to ease reliance on Putin's oils. Those are your front pages. Now more on the Media Buzz with my fantastic panel. Former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Blimey, I need to put my sunglasses on. Look at that. Glowing as always. Former London mayoral candidate. Picture of style and elegance, Sean Bailey. And the very glamorous, and if we're honest, rather fuller than previously, author and journalist Rebecca Reed, who is expecting. How exciting. Now, the Department of Health has today revealed plans to burn over 500 lorry loads a month of unusable PPE. During the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic, ministers wasted a whopping £8.7 billion, that's right, £8.7 billion, on PPE, that's personal protective equipment, that wasn't fit for purpose and has since been gathering dust in stockpiles. And it's now their intention to recycle the medical equipment into fuel to generate electricity. But with mountains of the stuff set to be burned, does this prove that the government overreacted in their response to the virus and that their COVID theatre is now up in flames? Sean, what do you think about this? Do you think that this is evidence, along with unused ventilators and, of course, empty Nightingale hospitals, that the government calculated this wrong?
I think there's two things to say. £8.7 billion, awful lot of money. We need to get to the bottom of this. So who advised the government to buy this stuff? It'd be different if we bought the stuff and it was up to scratch and we didn't use it. That'd be one thing. The second thing as well, look, it's easy now to sit here with the benefit of hindsight and say too much was bought. But I want to walk you through a little scenario. What would we have done if we needed that PPE and we didn't have it? what would have happened then? Our death tolls could have gone up. What would we have done? So a government to provide some open provision is correct, but the important thing here is to learn the lesson. We've spent an awful lot of money, if this figure is correct, an awful lot of money. Who authorised that? Where were the experts behind that? Who needs to justify this? Because there's no doubt too much was bought. But you have to take into account that if we didn't have enough at that crucial time, there would have been a real panic on. Look at the nonsense that happened in Europe. We prepared, we bought a lot of vaccines. Europe didn't, and look at the...
I agree with you about the vaccine rollout. I mean, that was a triumph for the government. But did we need all of that PPE in the first place, or was it an overreaction by the government? You know, you had Sage predicting 500,000 deaths as a result of the pandemic. None of that happened. The modelling has been consistently wrong. And I do agree that in a hospital setting, you need a certain level of equipment. But there was, in the end, 2 years on, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but there was no stopping this virus.
Look, to be clear, too much is bought. We're burning it, that's clear. But I would, if you're sat at home now and you're thinking, well, I wouldn't have bought it, imagine you're in a meeting with all those, egghead experts saying to you, everybody in Britain's going to die, you better do something about it. As a government, you'd react.
Well, I agree. Well, I think you're right. But in that answer, I think Sean demonstrates that we did overreact. We don't blame the politicians. We blame the Sage scientists who thought this was Armageddon.
I blame Sage, and thankfully they have been disbanded now, haven't they? And good riddance. But I mean, I agree with Sean on this. At the very beginning, we didn't know what we were facing. None of us knew what we were facing. So I did think we had to invest in what we could do because the whole world was scrabbling for people.
But I don't know. But see, I don't like this. I don't think our leaders are there to panic. It's their job to be calm under pressure. And what they did is we went for...
With that.
I know. we went for... I don't think you'd panic. You've been in a top leadership position. No. You're a cool head under pressure, and I think they had a massive wobble.
We were having this debate during the break, and I think we have lacked real leadership in this country, especially when you see the Ukrainian president.
Yes.
The level of leadership he has set, and the example is amazing, and we've lacked that. All I wanted was a Prime Minister, and indeed an opposition, to actually have some balls, and we've not had that in any way, shape or form.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing to say is, look, here's what the virus is. It's a dreadful virus. We have to make sure we protect the vulnerable, and we need to tool the hospitals up. I get all of that. But, $500 million spent on ventilators, which then, it turned out, were not an appropriate mechanism for dealing with someone that had COVID, right? So what happened is they put people on ventilators and they were dying because of the ventilators.
Yes.
But there was this frantic clamour for ventilators, which we spent $500 million on, which were then not used. We had empty Nightingale hospitals. What did they cost? 1, 2, 3 billion?
The whole Nightingale thing was a bit.
All right, but it carries on. The endless testing. What about the test and trace, which cost the country
totally
35 billion quid?
Huge mistakes have been made, Mark.
But we didn't need. Arguably, we didn't need test and trace at all.
At the beginning, we didn't know any.
Right, but we did it for 2 years.
And you can imagine the uproar there would have been if we had
Dawn,
not
you've become have you been got at by number 10?
Surely the issue here is that with all of these things, it's not that we're trying to do it, it's that they were all done incredibly badly. If we'd spent all that money on PPE that was of the appropriate grade, it could sit in warehouses and be used by the NHS for the next 15, 20 years. We would have just spent our PPE money earlier and up front.
Yeah.
Similarly...
And we should have done it in advance, right?
But if anybody was sensible, I am not a particularly sensible person, but I might have said, these hospitals were making. If we don't have any doctors to run them, how are we going to have a Nightingale hospital? Because we can't magic up more doctors.
But there's another overreaction.
These are obvious things that people should have said to each other.
I do agree with you. Look, we should have had more doctors. We should have had more PPE in storage.
No, we couldn't have had more doctors. You can't magic up a doctor.
For sure. But what you also can't do when you overreact to a pandemic, in my view, is send doctors and nurses home because they've been contact traced. They've been in proximity to someone that tested positive for COVID. We had that for 2 years. And I spoke to Dr. Anthony Hinton, a retired NHS surgeon, who said, look, there are anaesthetists and nurses and A&E consultants who were sat at home watching Netflix and baking banana bread because they've been in contact with someone that tested positive for COVID. They work in a hospital. Go figure.
But the point remains, when we're talking about this PPE, the issue is not that we bought too much. The issue is that we bought it from the wrong people. And a lot of the contracts, and I don't know whether this is specific to this, but a lot of the contracts that went out didn't go to the best person or the most sensible person.
It went to experts who've done it before.
It went to some guy I went to Eton with, who I really like, and we're at their country house at the weekend, and I guess why not?
Or in one case, the bloke who ran the local pub.
This is...
But I totally agree with you. Oh, absolutely. We bought a load of rubbish, and also, as you say, how many mates were involved, and there must be an inquiry, and heads should roll if there's corruption. But it's all because of that culture of panic.
But you can't blame people.
An overreaction.
But at the beginning of a pandemic, we are all sitting here now. Sean is absolutely right. Hindsight is 20/20.
Well, I don't know. I was done
with
with lockdowns after 3 weeks.
Yeah, but,
you might have been, but the majority of people did not feel that way.
I just want to walk you through this. So we have an outbreak of the disease. We have no way of knowing what it's going to do. If the bodies were piling up in the street, right, as a government, arguing with people about having to dispose of PPE is bad. Arguing about why you let so many extra people die would be significantly worse. And that's the scenario that they were being talked through. And of course, you have all these
experts. A wrong scenario, by the way.
But you have all these experts.
But that is with hindsight.
Yes, you have all these experts who are saying to them, legitimate experts, you might not like Sage now, but at the time it was a civil service and others saying, this is a situation that you have to mitigate and the politicians had to make decisions. The only point I'm trying to make here is we need to hold everybody to account and look at what they did. Where are our experts? Why did they suggest what they said? What have we learned and what could politicians do different next time? The idea is just the politicians who got it wrong. They got it wrong. But it wasn't just them.
I'm going to defend Sage a bit here as well, because they were asked for the worst case scenarios by the government.
Yes.
And
why?
We were genuinely in a situation where care homes were putting on Facebook, if you've got spare aprons, please post them to us, because we don't have anything to wear. People were wearing Sainsbury's bags. Like, you can see why people thought maybe we need a bit more PPE.
What I don't understand with this story then, Rebecca, is why is this unsuitable? If they were begging for plastic bags and bin liners to use, why is this so unsuitable?
This is fully a guess, but my guess is that I think if they're going to sanction you using something in a hospital, there's probably a form with a long name, and if a mask doesn't meet that form, it has to be thrown in the bin.
I totally agree.
That's my guess.
And I hear everything that you're all saying, but I also think there's a case to answer as to whether or not this PPE made a blind bit of difference. It's something you have to ask yourself. When you learned how incredibly infectious COVID is, including Omicron, but Delta as well and Alpha, didn't actually help, and did nurses and doctors actually suffer with long shifts wearing all this PPE to no avail, to no useful end? Well, I look forward to the inquiry into that one too. But I do appreciate the balanced view of my panel. They are fantastic, aren't they? Lots more from them before we go, including my greatest Britain and Union jackass. They nominate and I'll choose, which is very exciting. And also coming up very shortly, in 1 minute's time, I'll be speaking with ex-Marine Colonel Stuart Scheller about his views on the Ukraine conflict. But first, here's a look at tomorrow's show with the main man who's back from 9, Dan Wootton.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, we'll bring you the latest expert analysis on Ukraine and cross live to Kiev to speak to the country's youngest MP, Sir Sviatoslav Yorash, who has bravely taken up arms alongside his countrymen and women to fight for his nation's freedom. As the world's best conductor loses his career for refusing to denounce Putin, are we in danger of weaponizing cancel culture by blacklisting anyone with Russian origins? Brendan O'Neill tackles the wave of anti-Russian hysteria sweeping the West in The Outsider. Elsewhere, Sir Robert Buckland is next to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry as the former Justice Secretary gives us a fascinating insight into the government's pandemic policy making. Plus, US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly and uncompromising columnist Rod Liddell give their take on the world's biggest talking points. And I'll break down the day's top news with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail star columnist Amanda Platel, the social media activist Adam Brooks, and the Sunday Mirror's political editor Nigel Nelson. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Looking forward to that one. It's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, a US Marine who published blistering criticisms of Joe Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal has announced that he has been discharged from military service. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller was court-martialed, imprisoned and fined $5,000 after publicly blasting the disastrous pullout of American troops in August. He questioned why Bagram Airfield was evacuated before everyone else was able to escape the Taliban. Stuart was relieved of his command the following day, but says he has since endured a horrific ordeal at the hands of his former employer. Well, Biden now finds himself at the forefront of another seismic military operation, and I'm delighted to say that Stuart joins me now. Hello, sir.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark, thanks for having me.
Well, listen, a privilege to have you on the show. You've served your country with distinction. What was your main criticism of the Allied withdrawal from Afghanistan?
It lacked any type of critical thought. I mean, we withdrew during the peak fighting season. Like you said, we abandoned Bagram Air Base out of a lack of planning. We relied on the Taliban for external security. We could have done things to prevent the attack. We had intelligence that the attack was coming. And then we conducted a drone strike that killed 7 children and 3 adults, none of them combatants. The combatant commander went on to say that he apologized and it was his fault. But I mean, through and through, there's probably not a better military historic example of failure through and through on the senior planner level.
And now we have another conflict in Ukraine. What's your assessment of how this is being handled so far by the White House?
I think the White House did actually a fair job of calling out what Putin was trying to do, his buildup of forces. He projected that the advance of NATO was the reason for the invasion. And the administration rightfully called out how he was going to falsely claim that Ukraine was going to try to invade. Ultimately, Putin's objective is a land grab. He wants to grab more territory and restore the sovereign territory of what was once the USSR. But I think Putin, through the last 2 incursions in Georgia and the Crimea area, received a quick resolution, and that's what he's used to. And right now, the longer this conflict draws out in Ukraine, the harder it's going to be for the Russians. Much easier to invade, much harder to hold, I can say from firsthand experience. And quite honestly, the Russians' tactics of the big armored columns that people see on TVs can be defeated quite easily today, and with armored reconnaissance, TB2, javelins on the ground. So I don't see this playing out well for the Russians over the long haul.
Stuart, do you think the botched Allied departure from Afghanistan encouraged Putin with this latest action?
Absolutely, Mark. Putin was looking at the domino effect of the instability that happened after the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. He didn't think the United States would have the internal fortitude to do much about it. And quite honestly, there's a lot of truth to that. The American people are sick of war. But at the same time, NATO is not an American responsibility. America is part of NATO, but this should be a NATO response. And right now it feels like the United States is kind of driving the NATO initiative. And I think part of that is because of the Afghanistan withdrawal / evacuation, how terribly it was conducted. The distraction is a welcomed thing for the United States government. So they're leading the charge on Putin, who is doing things that the sovereign nations of the world should not be standing for.
Now, Stuart, you were a senior ranking military officer. Did you know that you imperiled your career with your public criticism of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan?
I did. I stated it explicitly in my first video that I knew I was giving up my career, my retirement, and potentially my family's stability. But I made it anyway because this is something that I've done for the last 17 years. I've deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. I've been in combat. I've fought the wars that Great Britain has fought for the last 17 years as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in Great Britain that relate to the things that I was going through when I was watching this play out in real time. Senior leaders not addressing any failures, telling us that we should go seek counseling, just didn't fundamentally understand that it was senior leaders that were making terrible decisions. That, I mean, my 11-year-old could have looked at this plan and made a better plan. I mean, through and through, it was bad. And all we needed was then to acknowledge that it was a failed plan. And we just didn't get that.
Yeah, any fool could tell you that, including, as you said, a young child. Why were you willing to sacrifice so much to get that message out, Stuart?
Well, Mark, I'm on your show right now, right? So I'm able to go out and have a platform where I can speak to people, I can engage people, and my platform's building. I'm not done. Yeah. It's not over. I haven't had any generals that have been held accountable. General McKenzie, the CENTCOM combatant commander for the American forces that really should have been held accountable, has his change of command on April 1st, April Fool's Day. That's not a joke. That's the day he picked. He should talk to his staff and figure out why they picked that day. I don't know if I'll ever get a general to actually acknowledge the failures of this until, like 10 years down the road when they look at the history and realize what was so painfully obvious to the rest of us right away. But I think with the platform that I'm building and the people that I'm advocating for in politics, we will be able to make a difference.
Well, definitely, and I'd love to listen to a podcast that you might record. You should come back to GB News, and I'd love to read your book as well. I'm sure all of those projects will be in the pipeline now, Stuart, given that you've spoken out so bravely. What did you go through emotionally as you were court-martialed and imprisoned?
Yeah, I mean, it was very tough. I believe that through traumatic situations, we come out stronger. I believe that through combat. I hate how everybody victimizes service members and people think when they come back, they're damaged. I think when I go through challenging situations and I come out the other side, I'm stronger. And I feel like through this situation, the Marine Corps, the United States military, the United States government tried to bully me, but they forgot how strong our generation is and all the things that we've been through. I believe I can make a difference. I've been surprised at the amount of people that told me you won't make any change. This is just the way it is. I fundamentally disagree with them. I think this is our time, and I think things are going to change. And so the answer to your question is I think I came out stronger.
Briefly, Stuart, is America retreating from the world stage?
I don't know. I think America, like all nations right now, are trying to figure out their place. I think there is some balancing that needs to take place. I think America needs to retract and not try to be involved in everything, because in doing so, they're actually marginalizing their ability to have national strength. There's a way to project global power through your national sources of power and enhance them. And America has been making some choices where they've been trying to export democracy, trying to force their ideals in other places that just is probably not in line with the global order right now. The United States, I still think, has one of the strongest militaries. We still are all over the place and can project power like no other nation. But the United States needs to focus on some things at home so that when it's important, they can project power in the places that matter.
Well, Stuart, you were a hero in military service, and you now are a hero in a private capacity. And I look forward to our next on-air encounter. Have you got any social media handles people can follow you on?
Absolutely. You can just go to my website, AuthenticAmericans.com. All my social media is tied to it at the bottom. At Stuart Scheller is most of them. But if you go to AuthenticAmericans.com, you can see the book that you were referencing earlier. You can pre-order it, and I've got some documents and ways to fundraise, but all my social media is tied to that website. AuthenticAmericans.com, and authentic is the word. Stuart, what a conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. It's time now for this. That's right, my panel are going to reveal their Greatest Britain and Union jackass. We've got Dawn Neeson, Sean Bailey and Rebecca Reed. So, Dawn, who's your Greatest Britain?
It's an honorary one again. It's a little girl, Amelia, who sang Frozen in her native Ukrainian language in the Kyiv bomb shelter.
I love it, and I think we could take a listen.
И забудь, что прошло уже не вернуть. Отпусти и забудь.
What a fabulous little girl. What a lovely voice and what a wonderful message. Sean, who's your Greatest Britain?
Mine is Dorothy Lawrence, a female journalist in the Second World War who posed as a man to bring the true story from the front lines back to Britain.
Amazing. And how about you, Rebecca?
Mine is the gender pay gap bot who spent today showing up anybody who was just virtue signalling rather than actually trying to make a difference.
I'll have a piece of that. That is my Greatest Britain, although all three were fabulous suggestions. Dawn, how about your Union jackass?
Again, it's honorary because it's not a Brit, but it's Justin Trudeau. He's over here at the...
What's he done wrong?
How long have we got left on the programme? I mean, pretty much everything. But, I mean, what really did it for me was the virtue signalling, wearing a mask with Keir Starmer and then not wearing a mask with the Queen.
Yeah, a bit of double standards at work there. Sean Bailey, look, I know that you're a positive person. You don't like criticising people, but who is your Union jackass?
It's got to be the American school, one of the most expensive schools in the country, who've been downgraded by Ofsted for pushing a woke agenda rather than educating our young people, teaching them how to think, not teach them what to think.
Yeah, I mean, what can be done about the infiltration of our schools, do you think, Sean? I mean, if you were London Mayor, what would you do about it?
Provide a platform where people could have real conversations, where you don't get cancelled for challenging the woke agenda, where you don't get cancelled for challenging orthodoxy. It's a pain to me that happens in our educational institutes because that's the very place where broad, inclusive conversations should be had.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there's just too much politics in the classroom now?
undoubtedly. And if you go to any university, you see people getting cancelled and sidelined all the time. You go to schools, you see teachers, etc., pushing their agenda. It is important to teach young people how to think, not what to think.
Wow, what a line. Rebecca Reid, your union jackass.
Anybody who decided that they heard the words International Women's Day and decided to ask, when's International Men's Day? It's November 19th. There are important issues to talk about. Looking forward to talking about them in November.
Well, Rebecca, aren't there 364 International Men's Days?
No, there are lots of very real issues that affect men. I'm not hopping on that, Mark. You're not going to tempt me into that.
Don't take the bait, Rebecca Reid.
No.
Fantastic stuff. Well, my thanks to my amazing panel, Dawn Neeson, Sean Bailey and Rebecca Reid. It's been a really fantastic and quite wide-ranging conversation tonight. Thanks also to the team for working so hard over the last few days. We've spoken to so many people in Ukraine. Of course, we focused on other stories as well. Do keep an eye on what we're doing here at GB News for the latest on the conflict. I'm delighted to say that I'm back in the hot seat for Mark Dolan tonight on Friday at 9. Can't wait to see you then. But the main man is back tomorrow at 9. I'll be watching. I hope you will be too. Dan Wootton returns to Dan Wootton tonight. See you soon.
Hello there. Remaining windy through Wednesday with gales particularly through the morning towards the northwest and also some heavy rain. Brightest weather towards the south as well as the east, where we'll see some drier conditions. But currently across the UK, our weather is stuck in a pattern where we've got high pressure routed towards the central part of Europe. So any weather systems coming in from the Atlantic grind to a halt across the UK. So through the early hours of Wednesday morning, more clouds across England and Wales, some clearer skies for a time across Scotland. You can see this rain approaching across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. And that's when the winds will pick up to galefuls yet again, with gusts across more Western Isles coming in at around 55 to 60 miles an hour through the first part of the morning. Frost-free first thing across much of England and Wales, and the cloud will slowly break, so we'll see some more brighter skies evolving eastern Scotland, central and eastern areas of England. At the same time, rain will clip West Wales, the West Country, and we'll continue to see some heavy bursts for the Isle of Man, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, with snow over the higher ground above around 300 metres. A milder day towards the southeast, temperatures here 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. And then as we head through Wednesday evening, this slow-moving band of rain just makes inroads across northern parts of England, southern Scotland, Wales, central southern England, even seeing some